what's it called? It's a term when you're like going it alone, lone wolf. I guess I'm thinking of lone wolf syndrome.
Did you just add syndrome to the end of that?
Flying by the seat of your pants. That's not right. I don't know.
Well, well, we're just gonna sit here until you figure it out.
No, no, no. Let's move on.
I finally
Watched.
I finally
Watched. I
finally
watched. I
finally
watched.
finally
Watched.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of I Finally Watched. I'm Milan.
And this is David, and today we finally watched Beverly Hills Cop.
Yep. I think the only part that I've ever seen of Beverly Hills Cop franchise is whichever one has the theme park in it. So that's either two or three, because that's definitely not this one. And it was only the tail end of it.
So, I was on the phone with you earlier, and Taylor in the background was saying it was three, and then Ashley earlier was like, the theme park one is my favorite, and she thought it was three. Um, I've always heard that like one's the only good one, really.
I've heard one is the only good one. I heard three is like absolutely horrible. But more excitingly, four is
Just came out.
already out.
Yeah, it just came out. Um, so I was saying this before we were about to start record. So when I was doing some research, the director of this, Martin Brest, he has he had done one movie before this, and I guess it commercially didn't do well, and so like a lot of people wrote him off. And then Jerry Bruckheimer badgered him until he agreed to do Beverly Hills Cop. So he did Going in Style, then Beverly Hills Cop. He has done, since 1984, he has done four movies.
But they're like pretty big, aren't they?
Well, to varying degrees. So in 1988, he did Midnight Run, which is beloved by
Yeah.
a lot of people. Son of a Woman, which won Al, finally won him his Oscar. Meet Joe Black, which
Brad Pitt, Devil.
I
Yep.
think middling reviews. Isn't he like the angel? Is he the devil? I don't know. I need to watch it. And then his last movie he ever did in 2003 was a little movie called Gigli.
That then systematically ruined his career.
Yeah. Somehow Ben and Jen got to come back from that, but he did not. Um, so I'll say when I started watching this movie, Beverly Hills Cop, opening, I was, so I like the opening with the song, the B roll over the heat is on.
Yep.
It just like, it really sets the stage. It almost, I think, works more nostalgically like for now. Like, right, me looking back at the 80s, it was like, it was cool. Whereas, like, in the moment when it comes out, you're just like, all right, let's get to the movie. But I'd say this movie started pretty slow for me
Hmm.
until like when he meets Serge, and then he starts meeting the cops in Beverly Hills, and then sort of they start developing a relationship, and then it just sort of picks up, and then by the end I was like, that's a great movie.
Well, it's interesting too because the beginning with the opening and the like you said, the B-roll montage with the heat is on is various like varying establishing Detroit,
Right, which we're barely in.
which we're barely in, and the movie is called Beverly Hills Cop, and so it's almost like trying to get you comfortable in this scene. It's like trying to get me comfortable in Detroit. Good luck, but it's trying to get you comfortable in this like location just to be like Eddie Murphy in this like fish out of water sort of environment once we move over to Beverly Hills. And what's funny too, I don't know if you noticed this, but his friend Mike, who was killed, who kind of set this whole thing off, is like wearing very like bright colored clothes when he comes in, and he has this like personality that everyone else is like. When Eddie Murphy is getting yelled at by the commissioner in the police station, and everyone is kind of like, everything is just kind of a little bit dreary, a little bit, everyone's wearing darker colors. But when we're in Beverly Hills, even the cops are wearing like brighter blue uniforms. Like the street, like the beat cops are wearing brighter blue uniforms. Um, the Tagger and uh oh my god, I had his name and I forgot his name.
Billy Rosewood.
Rosewood. It's Rosewood, sir. Yeah, Rosewood and Taggart are wearing like tan suits sometimes, colorful ties and stuff like that. It's just like all in all, the costume design, Surge, right? Surge, but the costume design is just a lot brighter in Beverly Hills. And then I don't know, I thought that was like a real interesting contrast between the two.
Yeah, it actually reminded me a little bit too of True Romance, right? Starting in Detroit, moving to LA, the LA area.
Oh yeah, 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 that's true.
Um, I
It's the only thing that should remind you of True Romance.
Let's see. Well, no, Surge.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
You broke my heart. So the opening scene, it's got this kind of, I don't know, like if you come into this movie, you're like, what is, I don't know how the trailers work for this movie, but when you come in and you see him selling this cigs, he's eventually going to end up in Beverly Hills as a cop. I guess you don't know how, right? So
Well, I didn't know if he already was a cop or is he going to be
right,
caught and
right.
this is like his life turns around here, decides to become a cop.
That's what I'm
I don't know.
saying. That's what I'm saying. So it's I love the way it starts with him trying to sell the cigarettes, and you just see the cop car way down at the end of the alley, drive by, then
Back
back
up.
up, then pull in. Then the
Yeah.
whole chase. Apparently, the executives loved the chase so much that the first time they saw it, they immediately greenlit two, just based off of
Wow.
seeing the movie and seeing that scene, which is cool. But I love just the end of it when they pull their guns on him and the one cop. You can see his face. It's pretty good acting from just a guy, just like, oh fuck, Axel. Like, we're sorry, we should have recognized you. And he like looks back at the other guys like, you fucking idiots.
What an interesting character name, Axel Foley, right? Because
Right.
it almost sounds like if you don't have like the mic, hoisted just right, it sounds like they're calling him asshole the whole time.
Right. And then after this, I was kind of like, why is the chief so mad at him? Because like it's really these other cops that fucked this up. You know what I mean? But it's
Yeah.
unauthorized. It's probably a pattern of behavior from him.
I think what we find out in like 2 and 3, and then continuing onto the new one, is that the trope of Axel Foley is like kind of like Bad Boys, right? It's just destruction of property, like unnecessarily a abundance of destruction of property.
Yeah. And then his boss, Inspector Todd, was actually a real like Detroit detective who just like when the director was like kind of meeting with people to figure out the movie, like he just had him play the role. And then Paul Reiser in just the smallest role ever, but like pretty good in his like 30 seconds of screen time.
Remind me who he is again?
He's the white guy in Detroit who's like, you need to go talk to the captain. You don't hide. You don't know who Paul Reiser is?
I mean, no. I mean, probably by face, but like
Season
by
2 of Stranger Things, where he's like running the lab. He takes over the lab. Season 2 through 5.
oh. Okay.
Mad About
Okay.
You?
I,
Nothing?
I,
You're too
let's not do
you're too
this.
young for me.
So, so okay, we get this like fish out of water thing with Axel, and we're gonna talk about Mike and his whole deal in a minute. But one thing I found really interesting is how many of the classic police tropes this movie does. It's like you have the angry police commissioner always yelling at the rookie or the hotshot cop, right?
Yep.
Like breaking the rules but not breaking the law, like that sort of thing. But then you get like the evil, corrupt, almost it felt like Lethal Weapon type of villain. Like he like Lethal Weapon 4 diplomatic immunity sort of thing, but he didn't
Diplomatic
have
immunity.
diplomatic immunity. He was just an asshole, a rich asshole. But yeah, it just all the tropes. Like, I mean, I was just waiting for like, oh man, I'm just 2 days away from retirement, sort of thing.
You know what? And like maybe that's why the movie started out slow for me, because it's an Eddie Murphy movie, and being like, I was born like 3 years after this came out, so Eddie Murphy to me is like Nutty Professor and the
Yeah.
donkey from Shrek, right? So this, if I had gone into this being like, this is Lethal Weapon vibe, rather than like, all right, where are the jokes? Like, why are there, you know what I mean? The jokes are
Right.
so much more subtle in this. It's like the comedy is not in your face really at all. And so I think that set of expectations sort of probably had an effect too. Um, and so then we get to hear the theme song, and then his friend just shows up. What Tommy? I think you were saying, and we get the
Mikey.
Mikey, whatever. Who gives a shit? Guy who's about to die, and he has
Jesus.
bearer bonds. I love every 1980s movie that has to do with like police investigation involves bearer bonds.
Yeah, I was just thinking. Taylor and I were watching something recently that had to do with bearer bonds. Oh, it was actually it was kind of early 2000. It was the first episode of White Collar.
Right. Well, I think his bearer bonds, from what I've heard, it's literally just whoever holds it. It's the bearer's bonds. So it's like,
Right.
but it's not cash, and so that's why it's just like plot device wise, it was so good for these movies.
No, of course. And these are German stolen, illegally fucking bullshit, but makes them valuable, makes them bad.
It's also kind of funny if they're just shipping in bearer bonds over and over again. I guess the drugs are what's getting them the bearer bonds. I don't know. I was like, what are they like? Well, maybe just stick with the bearer bonds because that at least like the police don't seem to care about that part of it. Um,
Well, I don't get that either because it's like you have bearer bonds and then you have coffee grounds hiding the drugs. But I thought the bearer bonds were like almost like, well, if we get caught with the bearer bonds, at least we'll get the drugs through.
yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't. I mean, that part's not really well explained. I think you're just supposed to be like, these are bad guys. You know what I mean? So
These are bad people. I do want to talk about Mikey's death. Did you recognize the guy who killed Mikey?
yeah. Well, so I recognized him, but every time that I see him, I was like, who is that? I know him, but I don't. And then it's like he looks so much different in Breaking Bad.
Well, I mean, he's like what 30 years older.
But like the hair and everything. I mean, like people get older and I still recognize them. You know what I mean? Like him, it's like actually difficult. Each time I'm like, who is this?
I recognize him right away.
Well, I recognized him, but like remembering that that's him was always a trip. So when the death scene happens, I was like, did I blink? Like, I don't really understand. Where did Eddie Murphy go?
Right, because he was. I. That's another thing too. I'm glad you brought it up. Is that he was knocked out almost off screen.
Well, so and the director said that he wishes he had fixed that because he said it's very confusing. I was like, yeah, well, I agree. Like, thank you. I mean, it clears up afterwards when he's holding his head and his friend's dead. I mean, also like, and you said this earlier when we were talking before, but like, dude, 1980s, they just freaking execution style shot a dude in the hallway. Like, you know he's gonna die because like that's the way the movie has to go. But
Right.
the way it happens, you're like, holy fuck.
Yeah. Well, he shouldn't have left Eddie Murphy's fridge open.
True, and you also shouldn't steal bearer bonds. How did that? I mean, it doesn't need to be explained because there could be a million explanations. But how did they find him at Eddie Murphy's apartment in Detroit?
Oh, that's a good question. I thought you were going to ask me how did he steal the bearer bonds, and I was like, well, if he was put up security to
Yeah,
guard the bearer bonds,
just grabbed them.
grabbed a few.
The
Also, who thinks that's a good idea?
and run to another country. You know what I mean? Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, what are you doing? The whole warehouse thing where it's like this is where it sits outside of customs or whatever. It was like, is this tenant? You know what I mean? But like,
Oh yeah,
which it just turned out to be like a front. They're breaking the law.
You
There.
were thinking Tenet. I was thinking of the giant warehouse at the end of Indiana Jones. That's the Ark of the Covenant's
Oh,
right
right.
next to the bearer bonds.
So they kill him, and his boss is like, "I'm not putting you on it. Don't you do a fucking thing." And he's like, "All right, well, that was a friend of mine. You know what? I'm just gonna go take vacation." And he's like, "All right, you can take vacation, but you know," and he kind of knowingly like, "Hey, I'm gonna."
My favorite part of this in the early stage of this movie is when he's talking to Taggart and Rosewood, and I forget the Beverly Hills commissioner's name,
Lieutenant.
but Lieutenant. Oh,
You just call him the
okay.
lieutenant. It's like Gugamel or whatever. Who gives a shit?
Oh
Just call
yeah,
him
it's
the
Bogomil.
Bogomil. But just call him the
Yeah.
lieutenant.
So he's like, "What are you doing here?" It's like, "I don't know, man. I'm on vacation." It's like, "You bring your gun on vacation?" He goes, "I've never been on vacation."
I think the Beverly Hills stuff is so he gets to Beverly Hills and he immediately finds this hotel and he's like, "Is this real expensive?" And the guy's like, "Not for Beverly Hills." And you're like, "Oh, what the fuck does that mean?" And he does the whole Michael Jackson thing, like, "You guys, because I'm a black guy," and they say, "All right, well, we'll give you a suite, but we'll charge you for a normal room." He's like, "How much is that?" And one of my favorite jokes in the beginning of this, he's like, "It's 235 a night," and it's just the longest pause, and he's like, "Fine, that's fine," but it's like that is not fine.
It's so funny because that is not for like a hotel in Beverly Hills. It's just that is so cheap.
Well, today that'd be 630 something bucks.
See, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes
Well,
sense.
that's like I just remember as a kid we would go to the Disney resorts sometimes and it would be like two. I asked my dad, I was like, "How much was that?" And he's like, "I don't know, $200-300 max, during like the peak times or whatever." And if you want to stay there now, it's like a minimum $500 to $600. It's just insane. Like I don't even like that's like you stay there for
You could
3 days
stay
and that's
no,
your rent.
no, exactly. You could stay there for like well, people who stay there for 3 days and that's their rent don't stay there for three
Well,
days.
correct. Yes, they.
And also, or they shouldn't be, right? But also, like I remember a weekend at Animal Kingdom was like $800. Now it's $800 a night. It's insane.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Fuck Disney. That's what I'm saying.
Fuck, please sponsor us. No, fuck Disney.
No, I don't.
Um, the yeah. So I kept waiting, and I don't know about you, but I kept waiting that every time he confronted the villain of the story, I forgot his name too,
Victor.
but in Victor Maitland, there it is. If every time he confronted Victor Maitland and he's escorted, first of all, Victor Maitland is an idiot because first of all, if a guy comes up asking about a guy you just had knocked off, right? Why don't you just act cool, calm, and collected? Be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear about your friend. I don't know what happened to him, but I'll give you anything you need to figure this out." Like play the helper. Don't get like, "Hey, six guys to like fucking escort him out," and then the front door is right there, but nah, throw him out the window. My favorite joke in the whole movie is you're gonna charge a guy for being thrown out a window. What do I get if I'm thrown out of a car?
Yeah,
Jaywalking?
that's really good. That's yeah. That's part is very funny. I like before that. So we skipped over him meeting Serge in the gallery, and I love the
Oh, you got a thing for Serge. You like Serge. Go ahead.
well
Talk
no
about
because
Serge.
just the lines of like he's like how much does this go for? And he's like 130,000. Get the fuck out of here! I will not get the fuck out of here. Like is so good. There also is a little moment before that too where he walks by these guys wearing leather suits and he laughs at them.
Oh, it's the before and after of Michael Jackson, right?
I don't know if that's why he's laughing. Those guys are wearing like similar suits to what he wore in his comedy specials, Delirious and Raw. And Delirious came out a year before this, and Raw came out like 2 or 3 years after.
Oh, is that it? I thought because he just lied about Michael Jackson, and then it cut to that scene, and I was like, "Oh, it's Michael
It could be
Jackson."
both. It could be a little bit of both. Yeah, I love the throwing him out of the window though, and just that he's like disturbing the piece, and he's like just dumbfounded about it. Um, and then
Oh, that's hold on real quick. I was waiting for this part of the movie where we were gonna find out that Victor Maitland had the cops in his pocket.
yes, I thought the lieutenant was bad the entire movie, and so then at one point the lieutenant is like, I don't care about your evidence, just tell me what you got, like let's hear this, almost as if he's like, I know Victor's a bad guy, and I was like, all right, is this supposed to be the trick?
But then I thought the commissioner
Yeah,
was the bad guy.
yeah, and then
But it never came to that because I was like, how do these cops get there so fucking quick? The guy just got thrown out the window. The guy just got caught at the warehouse. Like, how do the cops
I have
show
an
up
answer.
that fucking fast?
It's a black guy in Beverly Hills with a gun.
I mean, that's true too. I was thinking, like, doesn't it feel like every time Axel Foley did something wrong, like he was followed by Rosewood and Taggart, but then he was followed by those other two guys.
Right.
And every time we're cut back to the police station, no one's fucking doing anything and they're all there. I'm like, is there any other crime happening in Beverly Hills at the moment?
I mean, those are the detectives, right? There's thousands of cops.
Yeah, but it just feels like they are just having a slow weekend.
Yeah, possible. Well, once again, it's
And the fact that this
Beverly
movie
Hills.
takes Well, yeah, maybe, but like, there's not a domestic violence somewhere. Like, surely, like an actor's like beating his wife or something. I don't know. The point is, though, is that this movie takes place in only 2 days. Isn't that kind of incredible?
Yeah, well, so much happens. Yeah, it is. It's like I don't know. I didn't even think about that. I mean, once he gets
Like,
once he
not the beginning
yeah,
stuff,
once he gets to Beverly Hills, right?
right? Yeah.
So he goes in. This part is really good. It's funny, but also establishes like he's the fish out of water. The fact of how different Detroit is to Beverly Hills. He gets Taggart riled up. Taggart punches him. And then the lieutenant comes over. He's like, "Would you like to press charges?" And he's like, "Is this a fucking joke?" He's like, "We don't do that in Detroit. We don't go after our own." And he's like, "Well, in Beverly Hills, we're by the book," which just kind of sort of sets up like the whole movie from there, right? Like, not the
It
main aspect,
does.
but just like all the cop stuff surrounding it. And
It does, and what's so good about this scene is that it immediately gets Rosewood and Taggart to start liking Foley.
it does. They haven't turned around yet, but it does.
It establishes that when they do turn around, you think back to moments like this early game, and you're like, ah, yeah, of course.
Now, one thing I would say the writing being a little bit light here, like in retrospect, the way they paint the lieutenant is almost weird. So he's like, "Yeah, so I talked to your boss. He said if you're out here investigating, you're fired. So what are you doing out here?" And he's like, "I'm on vacation." He's like, "Are you sure you're on vacation?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm on vacation." He's like, "Okay, well then we're gonna go arraign you, and we'll have to have someone bail you out." And I was like, what answer would not have resulted in him being you know what I mean? What was the right answer?
I agree with you too. It's like I'm telling you, you cannot answer this way. So what is your answer? Well, not that way. Well, I'm waiting for you to say the one thing I told you not to. You can't say. Like it doesn't make sense, but I I don't know. Oh, and what's her name?
Jenny.
The Jenny, right?
Yeah.
At the end where Jenny is confronted by Victor and he's like, "Your friend Axel uh is in town. Do you know him?" That's not how he says it, but you get the point. She says, "Yeah, he came by yesterday and that's the only time I've seen him and I haven't seen him since." I just really felt like
She was gonna die.
she was gonna die.
Yeah.
And I was like, how do you not know your employee got bail on someone? I'm like, this dude is so fucking rich. This guy has eyes everywhere. At a moment's notice, he has 6 guys escorting this dude out a window, right? How does he not know that his employee just paid bail for someone?
I'm wondering if like is it giving the movie too much credit to say it plants a bunch of things to purposely throw you off? Like the fact that the police respond so quickly, the fact that the lieutenant acts weird in that scene with Jenny, I'm like, ah, fuck, he's about to kill her. She's gonna
Well,
lie.
it's that, or what most likely happened is they write all these things in, and they're like, "This movie is going to be 5 hours long. We have to cut things out." But what's left is like ghosts of those things.
Yeah, and one thing I'll say is in reading up on it, so like Mike Eisner was kind of like the impetus for this movie. He was like when he was, I think it was Paramount, when he was with that studio and he had an interaction with the cops. He was like, "I want this movie made," and it just went through so many script iterations. And then even when they started filming it, like people were getting pages like an hour before their scene. So the scene where we first meet the lieutenant's boss, Chief Hubbard, he's carrying papers in his hand. It's his script pages because he had just received them.
Yeah, that's
So
crazy.
it,
But I mean, that's kind of how you just did in the '80s, you know?
but to me, it kind of worked so perfectly where I don't even think you could have written it purposely this well to lead you to believe so many different things. To like, oh, let me follow this trope. This is what the movie's doing, or this, and then you're like, no, it's pretty standard, but it's just well done. But it because of all the things, the sidetracks, you like, it keeps your attention, and then it doesn't matter that they don't pay off because it's like, oh no, that it was just. It also makes sense that the lieutenant would be so wary of this guy because he just caused a scene in like this rich part of town. He got thrown through a window, and you think it's, I don't know how you think it's his fault, but that's whatever. They say he threw himself through a window. Um,
Yeah, but that's it's so fucking funny. So if I throw myself out of a car, what am I charged for? Jaywalking?
I've heard you like that part. So Jenny bails them out, and then the police are following them. And and by the way, so this is the second time I think this tailpipe scene coming up that we hear the main theme song. We heard it in Detroit when he's going home and he first meets
Have
Mikey.
you ever heard this song before?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Do you know where I know this song and where most of people my age know this song?
Yeah, some meme.
It's not. It's a like a DJ remix called Crazy Frog. He did a bunch of these fucking things, like 80s music, remixed it into his image. But Axel F, remixed by Crazy Frog, is probably the most well-known remix of Crazy Frog. And yeah, I'm just so surprised you're just like a bit too old to like be caught in that.
Oh no. So this is pretty funny. So originally he sends over the room service. Originally he was supposed to get a potato. They ran out of time. And so Eddie just grabbed, I guess, his friend, Damon Wayans, who
That
is
was Damon Wayans, right?
yes, who is Banana Man in the cast listing.
Dude, that was so good. And also, it's so funny because Eddie Murphy throughout this whole movie has this like, he's kind of, let's be real here, he's kind of an asshole, like a little bit of
Yeah.
just a plain asshole. But he has this particular like charm about him that just makes the everyman on his side. So like Damon Wayne just plays this like random waiter at the thing, gives him the bananas for free, right? And then the the waiter who takes the takeout food to the cops sees him puts the banana in the tailpipe, and they've never had an exchange before this, and they just wink at each other like, that's okay, man.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, no, that's pretty great. So after this, we're back at the police station, and the lieutenant's like, "If you lose them again, don't bother coming in." And then the two other cops have this fucking banana sunglasses thing. How the fuck did they make that
It's
happen
it's
so
like
quickly?
it's like, what is it called, Groucho
Yeah,
glasses.
but how did he just like he's wasted as a police detective that he could create that prop? Like they just heard the story right then. Like I don't even understand how he made that happen.
Is that, but hold on, is that a thing?
What?
Like the glasses with the banana nose?
I've never seen it before in my life.
It's just a random prop that someone fucking made on the
I
fly.
think it's a real banana he taped to his glasses. So they then go to another warehouse, and I love this scene. And like Axel keeps doing this where like people will question him, and he just gets angry and confident, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh fuck!" And this time he's like, "I'm a fucking inspector." I love, with the exception of Cleveland, this is the worst security in the nation.
I love that it like doesn't show anything below their waist. It just kind of follows them as he's angrily yelling at like the security guard, gets his boss, and then he's yelling at both of them. He's like, "This guy gave me a match." He's like, "You gave him a match?" And then it doesn't show where they're headed, right? But he sits down, and then he's like, "And starting with this," and he slaps the box that, like, the only thing he actually needs.
Yep. So I love the two of them yelling. The one guy's like, "Do you even have a warrant for this?" He's like, "You got a big fucking mouth, don't you? Is that your Porsche outside? I'll have the IRS in here up your ass."
No, sir. I don't know
That
whose
isn't
Porsche
even my
that is.
Porsche. That isn't my
That's
Porsche.
not even my Porsche. He's like, "Well, then I guess you got nothing to worry about."
So then he slides into the back of the police cruiser and he's like, "Hey guys, you guys follow? Sorry about the banana thing." And he's like, you know, "Do you want to get a drink?" And they're like, "Fuck no." He's like, "Well, you have to follow me anyway, so let's go get a drink." A very conservative place, so you know
I know
immediately.
this really upstanding place.
I'd say that like for the purposes of the joke, it's a pretty decent excuse for boobies in the movie. Just for the funny part. Apparently, that stripper was super famous, and the song she was dancing to was just like her song. That like so she chose it for the movie. She was like, "This is what I dance to." I thought
Super famous stripper, huh?
in the LA area, I guess. I thought I'm not familiar with the work. I thought the two thugs that come in the trench coats were gonna be Victor's guys.
Nope, just two regular thugs.
I mean, it's a cool scene. So I love the way that they're having this back and forth. He's explaining to him about the coffee grounds. he tells him the coffee grounds thing, but doesn't explain it, and it's never explained. I was like, that'll probably be explained later, which it is. Um, and he gives Billy the dollar to give the stripper, and then he notices the robbers. His face changes. He's like, "Do you see those guys in the trench coat?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, what of it?" He's like, "It's June. Don't you think that's weird?"
So one thing that this really does a good job of doing is show actually that he's a good cop.
Mm-hmm.
He's a good detective. He's very observant. More importantly, that he's good in his own right. It shows that he's better than them.
And it shows too that like his issues in Detroit are the fact that he kind of takes the initiative on his own. He's just not allowed to do that because it's not really working out. You know what I mean? Each time he's going a little bit in over his head with the decisions
What's
he's
it
making.
called? What's it called? It's a term when you're like going it alone, lone wolf. I guess I'm thinking of lone wolf syndrome.
Did you just add syndrome to the end of that?
Flying by the seat of your pants. That's not right. I don't know.
Well, we're just gonna sit here until you figure it out.
No. Let's move on.
But yeah, I agree that him recognizing how good of a cop, like Taggart realizing it, is because they have like this wink to each other when he tells him, "Is like, go get that guy, I'll get this guy."
Also, the fact that they start listening to him and he's just like not even a cop at this point, really.
Yeah, it just shows they're kind of like, I mean, they're kind of fucking browbeat. They're almost like suffered like domestic abuse, like mental abuse from their
Yeah.
job, where
What?
they're not allowed to be detectives. They're like, this is how we do things.
Yeah.
Real grunt work, and it's like they're not allowed to think for themselves. So when he's like, "Hey, you see those guys? Those are bad guys," it's like really like they would never profile people. They would just like wait for someone to start shooting before they would do anything.
Yeah. And what was that? There was a line that he's talking to Taggart. I think for some reason Rosewood isn't there, and he's like, "We're just gonna go off of something I like to call a hunch."
Yeah.
You remember? Like you remember those? Like that's what real police work does.
So they go back to the station, and Lieutenant's like, what the fuck happened? Why were you in a strip club? And then Eddie Murphy just tells this a complete story, and the Lieutenant's like, "Is that true?" And
Yeah.
Taggart then tells the truth. He's like, man, that super cop story was really working. I still can't get a read on you two, but I'm gonna figure it out.
It is such a beautiful moment because it circles back to that moment in the end
Yes.
where Taggart again has the perfect chance to tell the truth and he just leans into the lie and it's like perfect character growth moment.
So I guess when they were filming the scene, it was super hot. They didn't have any AC, and they've been going for hours.
In the strip club?
No, in the scene where he does the super cop story.
Oh, okay.
And Eddie Murphy, I guess, was like notoriously didn't take drugs, including caffeine. But he was like, "Fuck it, I need a cup of coffee." And he had never had coffee, and so he drank a cup of coffee, and then
Mormon? What's up?
I don't know, fucking ask him. What do you mean? Just don't interrupt me.
Okay.
Why are you asking me anyway? And then just does that take next, and you can actually see. Apparently, Judge Reinhold is like pinching himself in his pants, and Taggart is like looking down, pinching his nose, trying not to laugh, just because it just fucking came out of nowhere. I guess those three were able to ad lib so much because of how like frantically they were writing things at like hours before they would shoot, so they were given a lot of leeway to ad lib.
Well, also like I'm pretty sure it was like not planned for Taggart and Rosewood to be in all three, now 4 Beverly Hill Cop movies, but they probably did so well in the first one that they were like, yeah, they're just reoccurring now.
Yeah, you can kind of see how it's sort of unplanned, that chemistry. Like, it doesn't seem like that was intentional, and then it just happened. It's like a lightning in a bottle thing.
Exactly.
Not the lightning in a bottle from Deep Blue Sea, but the actual lightning in a bottle. By the way, great segue, and I gave away the answer. What movie have we done with Lieutenant Bogomil?
Deep Blue Sea?
Do you know who he was?
He was the second team?
No, he was the guy behind the desk with Samuel L. Jackson.
He was not.
Yeah. He looks
Oh my god.
He looks so good in this movie. He's so young, and I was like, who the fuck is that? I had to look it up because I would never have guessed.
That was only 3 years later. No,
15.
15.
It's only a short 3 to 15 years later. Yeah. So then he puts the other cops on it, and they follow him to Victor's house. And I love the whole like, I'm just having a picnic, and then he sees him. He's like, picnic's over, and starts chasing after him. One of the funniest parts to me is when he gets to the country club, and the guy's like, I need to tell him something. He's like, oh well, you can tell me. He's like, all right, well, tell him Ramon, I went to the clinic today, and I have herpes number 10. And he's like, you better tell him that. And one of my favorite parts of this movie, and we talked about how it's establishing he's actually a good cop. Zach immediately gets up and he just fucking dispatches him like he's nothing and throws him into the buffet table.
Zach looks so fucking shook. Like
Yes.
he looks back like, what the fuck just happened? And Victor, he knows he lost some respect in his boss's eyes. Like he was just like kind of like down. I like when Victor like told him to like don't go after him. Like let's hear what he has to say. And goes, oh, I like that trick. Can you tell him how to sit and shake hands, roll over?
I find funny is later on the chief is like, he ruined the buffet table at the country club.
I know. I was like, how did he find out about
And
that?
why does he
fast?
care? Why does he care?
But again, the cops were there so fucking fast.
Yeah, it's weird. So I love the two. He's like, if I find out you kill my friend, I'm gonna come back and fuck you up. It's a great line. And then he goes in, and I already talked about the lieutenant, where he's like, I don't need evidence. Tell me what you have. Tells him.
You know what's so great about movies in the 80s is that it wasn't very well established that like PG-13 kind of existed but didn't really exist. So you either went PG or you went hard R, right? Not that kind of hard R, but you went R. And the fact that you could just have these action movies just throwing the word like fuck around a bunch of times, I miss that.
So judging, like, taking into account inflation, this is, I think, the third highest R-rated movie ever. Gross.
Still?
Yeah. Whenever someone wrote that fact.
That's crazy. I mean, look, we get like Deadpool nowadays, right? Where it's like, oh, it's a comedy, it's an action, it's R. We can say fuck as many times as we want. I don't know about this new one since it's owned by Disney, but that's what I was promised. But you really just don't get that kind of freedom of speech anymore in movies because it's like, oh, we want to make so much money because the movie business is dying. We need to make it like available and liked by general audience. We have to keep the fucks down to a minimum because then we won't get as many people watching it. I just think it's a bloody shame. Also, do you think a movie like this could be made today and still be successful?
And we'll find out tomorrow.
No. So the thing with movies that are made today, it's like I feel like it's action scene after action scene after action scene. And this movie has maybe I can think of really only two really big action scenes. And everything else is more like investigative talking. And I don't think those movies make that much money nowadays.
Well, almost nothing makes money. Like, it's hard to figure out what's going to make money nowadays.
I mean, you have to almost have like a Dune to make money.
Yeah. So they then, I think I don't know if the chief comes out at this point, but basically he's like, all right, we have to take you to the city limits. I know the chief does come out. He's like, we have to take you to the city limits, and the charges will be dropped unless you come back. Then we're going to, prosecute you to the fullest extent. And that is the point where I'm like, all right, so maybe the lieutenant is not the bad guy because he seems like he actually wants to like talk with Foley and get information from him. But then he sort of convinces Rosewood, like, hey, and Rosewood's like, my one job is to take you to this fucking city limits, and I'm not going to do it. So then they go to Jenny, and I love this little bit. Well, first of all, Serge again, where he's like, can you get him an espresso? He's like, you want the little bit of lemonade? He's like, oh, if it's not too much trouble. So originally, Bronson Pinchot it was supposed to be two guys, but the director loved him so much that he's like, I'm just gonna let you do all of it. And the other guy was the guy who's like, shirt. He's like, you need to button your shirt back up in the beginning, like.
Oh, okay.
So he was supposed to have a lot more to do, and the other
He's
guy.
like, it's not sexy.
Yeah.
Eddie Murphy's like, no, it's not sexy.
But I love the line when he's talking with Jenny, and she's like, "I'm gonna come." And he's like, "Listen, I don't want to stand here and argue with you." She's like, "Oh, great, I'll go grab my purse and we'll argue in the car."
I like too, like that banter continues when they get to the warehouse. He's like, is there any possible way that you just hand me the keys from your purse and you just stay here? She goes, there is no possible way. He goes, okay, let's go.
So they go find the coke, and then immediately the bad guys are there. And the one bad guy's like, "Oh, remember when I knocked you out in Detroit?" And you can see his face change. And he says to Victor, he's like, "If you touch her, I'm gonna fucking kill you." And Victor's like, "Oh, that'd be a neat trick." Which then, when Victor sees him on the camera, he's like, "What the fuck is happening?"
Yeah.
The only one like more you remember you've seen the first John Wick?
Yeah.
Well, John
Yeah.
Wick is completely tied to a chair, and he's like, "I'm gonna fucking kill you." And the guy's like, "What are you talking about? Like, we're about to kill you right now. What are you saying?" And then John Wick sort of luckily gets out. But like,
Yeah.
um,
My favorite part in this thing, like you said this isn't like a straight up comedy, but we've said a lot of really fucking funny jokes in this movie. Like we mentioned like a lot of jokes in this movie, and one of the and it's more of like not like a knock knock who's there sort of joke with a punchline.
I
It's
would
more
hope it's
like
not knock knock jokes. Yeah,
no, but I mean it's more like natural within the realm of this reality. But one of the funniest things here is that there's two guys in the security room watching the security cameras. It's like, you want to get the fuck out of here? Yeah.
they don't even make it. They should have gone on foot. They would have had a much better chance if they'd like just gone through the backyard.
Yeah,
Um,
true.
so Rosewood saves him and shoots the one guy. And like when he shoots the one guy, like like I mean anyway, but like Zach's gonna die. He's not getting taken to jail. So they go to
Well,
Victor's.
you also look at Rosewood's face when he shoots the one guy, and it looks like he either has never shot his gun before, or he's never killed anyone with his gun before.
Right. Yeah. Um, so they go to Victor's and they tell Taggart to go check the drugs, and he's like, "No, fucking send the other guys." And then he goes. I love Taggart like doesn't want him to go in. He's like, "You're gonna have to fucking shoot me. You have to fucking kill me." When
And then he's like, "Hey, hold on 1 minute." He comes out with a shotgun.
so when this is happening, I was like, this breach of this house reminds me so much of Commando.
Oh my god, yeah.
It's the Commando house.
Oh my god.
Commando came out.
It's a beautiful house.
Yeah, Commando came out a year later. It's also funny that is supposed to be in like some Caribbean island or like near South America, and it's just in LA, that house.
I mean, it makes sense. It fits. You just put a bit more palm trees out there. Um, the no, the house is gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like did you notice the like the tile detail on the walls and the staircase?
I was too busy laughing at them trying to get over the wall.
Okay, that was pretty fucking funny.
That was the
Taylor and I
most
were watching this.
That was the most slapstick part of the entire movie, is them like spending like minutes trying to get over this wall.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was embarrassing. Like, first of all, for a grown man to like be be struggling to get over a wall, and then to get even more embarrassing to ride piggyback and still struggling to get over the wall.
Yes. Yes. Oh, by the way, when I was talking earlier, so this broke the record of The Exorcist as the highest grossing R-rated movie, and then it wasn't surpassed until 2003 by The Matrix Reloaded, and now for adjusting for inflation, this is third behind The Exorcist and The Godfather for the most highest grossing R-rated movie ever.
I don't know why this reminded me of it, but there was this this video about this like late 80s thing interview going around, catching couples coming out of the theater with their kid going to see Aliens. I don't know if you've seen
I
this.
did. I think you sent it to me.
Oh, I did? It was like, do you regret taking your kid to go see Aliens? And he's like, yes, I do. And he talks to the kid, like, do you regret seeing this? And the kid's like, nope.
He's like, no. That was some good shit. So I mean, this last scene, there's other funny stuff too. When they're when Rosewood and Taggart are like kind of bogged down, Rosewood stands up. "It's the police. You better," and then starts getting shot at. And Taggart's like, "If you do that again, I'll fucking shoot you myself." And then he's like, this is like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid against the Bolivian army at the end of the movie. He's like, yeah. And then the payoff of when like all the other cops show up and then he stands up and like, this is the police, put your guns down.
It works. It works. They put
Yeah.
their guns down, and he has like the biggest smile.
Yep. Yeah. That's great. So obviously Axel has to go in alone on this, and he kills Zach, then gets winged by Victor, and then I love the lieutenant coming in and like unloading the clip into Victor.
As Axel's unloading his clip into Victor, it is pretty awesome. Also, give it up for Ginny for fucking getting out of the way.
Mm-hmm. Good shit. And then the part you talked about, sort of full circle, where the chief is like, "Why is this guy not arrested?" And he's like, "Well, you haven't heard my report." And then it's not even that much of a lie.
No, it's not.
It's pretty damn close to. I mean, there's a little bit of procedure issues with what he says, and then just Taggart completely signing off on it, and the chief
What
like,
do you think the chief thought about all this? When he was driving to the house, he was like, "God, I gotta think of something."
you mean the lieutenant?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think you can see when the chief is like browbeating Rosewood, like, why is this guy not arrested? You can almost see the lieutenant back behind him, like, like getting himself psyched up to do this, like he's going to his father to be like, "No, daddy, that's not what happened." You know what I mean? Like, and so then he does it.
No, daddy.
But
No, papa.
what is funny is like the chief then immediately like, "All right, that sounds great, congratulations." He's like, "I want that report." It's basically like, if you're signing off on it, fuck it, whatever. We just stopped a ton of cocaine. I don't care.
But see, that's when I thought, I'm like, is the chief in on it? But then he gives in easily. And I was like, all right, I guess that's just not ever going to be a plot point to be like, I wonder if it becomes a thing in 2 or 3, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. So then he's like, "Hey, I need one more favor." And he's like, "You're all out of favors." He's like, "All right, well, I was going to have you talk to my boss, but I guess I'll just move out here." And he's like, "I will talk to your boss first thing in the morning."
Open up my own private eye business. It's like, nah. And somehow, between that and next movie, he returns to Beverly Hills.
Yeah, I would assume like if you're going to do the sequel, you should like rewrite the ending to just like he does move out here. I mean,
Yeah.
so then he's,
But I don't even think in the 4th one he's moved out there.
I don't know. So at the end, there was this one bit where you're like, I get this is, I'm saying the ending, the end ending, I think is a little bit cheap in that you're the whole time I'm like, what is he gonna do to afford this hotel? Because he can't afford this hotel. And then the cops are just like, "We'll pay for it." And I'm like, what was gonna happen? Like, what was the plan?
Maybe that was the plan. Maybe he knew he'd get an expensive hotel, he'd help out the cops, and they'd cover for him.
Yeah, I don't know. Or maybe he was just like, "I'm just gonna go into serious debt."
I thought he was going to like put the bill on Rosewood or Taggart as like a last little joke or something. But I mean, I guess that is kind of what happened. Like this whole time he had it under, like he changed it to like Taggart's name, like under Taggart's name, or he swiped his credit card or something when he wasn't looking.
I love giving them the robes that the police paid for too. It's like, "I love you."
Oh yeah, that was good. He's like, nah. He's like, no, I want you to have it, Foley. He's like, I got 3 in the bag already. Don't worry about it. And then it ends on that like that 80 freeze frame of him like looking back, make sure he's following them to the, I guess like what, another strip club.
Yeah, and the studio like hated that shit, but they were like, I think he had to do that in order to get like another scene that he wanted. So,
Oh, I thought it ended fine.
yeah, I didn't care. I mean, that's like now it's just like stylistically you're like, "Oh, that's like so 80s." So we're in the fun fact territory. The director Martin Brest flipped a quarter to decide whether or not to make this movie, and then after its enormous success, he like framed the quarter because of how much it affected his life until Gigli. Did you know who was originally supposed to star in this movie?
Well, I know Eddie Murphy was supposed to be Will Smith's role in Independence Day.
Sylvester Stallone.
As Axel Foley.
Yeah, it was supposed to be Sylvester Stallone. It was
I do want to say that
it was written for him.
that's such a different movie.
Yeah,
I don't think he could say the N-word and get away with it though.
I mean, if he's depending on if it's like it's after Rocky, he's so punch drunk, maybe people don't even understand it, you know?
Oh yeah. Like he's in the hotel lobby. He's like, "Oh, I get it. It's loud and clear to me."
It's because I'm a black guy, right?
It's like, I don't know what you're talking about, sir. I do want to say, like, it is kind of funny. I know we all get old, we all age, but looking at the new trailer for Beverly Hills Cop 4, looking at Eddie Murphy next to Taggart and Rosewood, Eddie Murphy looks like he hasn't aged a day because those two dudes aged so much.
I mean, he looks very good for his age, but he definitely looks different here. Like he's put on, a little bit of weight.
I'm saying comparatively to like two old white guys.
Yeah. So, the scene that, so in order to have the studio wanted that freeze frame, and he allowed it because otherwise they wanted him to cut the scene with Victor and Jenny where she's like, "Do you know where Foley is?" Which I don't understand why. That scene's like 30 seconds long. Like, who gives a shit?
I don't know.
Um,
Where he goes to Ginny to confront her about him?
well, where Victor goes to her to,
Yeah.
yeah,
To Ginny to confront her about
yes.
Foley. That scene almost barely feels necessary. Okay, whatever.
It does, because your expectation is for them to, like, at the very least, like, take her right then, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
so here, this is like all the alternate casting. So Axel Foley was originally going to be played by Stallone or Mickey Rourke.
Oh, God.
And so Stallone left to do Cobra, and then Rourke left to do The Pope of Greenwich Village. And then all these guys were considered. Jeff Bridges, James Caan, Billy Crystal is actually, I think, pretty great. De Niro, Harrison Ford, Richard Gere, Mel Gibson, Gregory Hines, Michael Keaton, Nick Nolte, Al Pacino, Richard Pryor, Dennis Quaid. This is like just like every guy in the 80s. I don't know if I even believe that.
No, hold on. It's every white guy in the 80s. How did they settle on like
Richard Pryor's,
Eddie Murphy?
Richard Pryor's not white.
Oh, you said Richard Pryor. I didn't hear that.
And then Martin Scorsese was offered the chance to direct, but he turned it down because he felt it was too similar to the movie Coogan's Bluff, which is like, come on, Marty. Like, every movie is going to be similar to some fucking movie that you've seen. You know what I mean? Like, you've seen everything.
I'm this is real similar to that one movie I saw with my wife.
Is that your Scorsese?
Yeah.
Anyway, I like this movie. I don't know. I thought I would like this movie, but I was a little bit gun shy because I saw 48 Hours within the last couple years, and I thought that was just not great. And I think that's a little bit beloved, but this was definitely better than that. I do want to see 2 and 3, not necessarily for the pod, just to be like, is it worse? You know what I mean? Like, I think I need to check those out now. I don't know that I'm going to check out the fourth one unless people are like, oh, it's great.
I'm gonna watch the fourth one like tomorrow when it comes out.
Well, good for you. That's great.
You're not gonna watch it after all that?
Well, once again, I'm going to watch.
I heard Surge. I heard Surge is in it.
Oh well, then all bets are off, I guess.
Do you know who directed the third one?
No.
John Landis.
Oh. Well, thanks for listening to another episode of I Finally Watched. This is David.
And this is Alon. And we finally watched Beverly Hills Cop.
Do 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 do.